What's up everyone, Chlorine King here, thanks for tuning in for another one. If you live in an area with lots of trees, you know exactly when pollen season hits. Your car turns yellow, your patio furniture turns yellow, your driveway turns yellow, heck, your dog might even turn a little yellow. And of course, your pool turns yellow too. And when a pool owner sees that yellow dust floating on the surface, the first thing that usually comes to mind is, oh great, my pool has algae. But most of the time it's not algae, it's pollen. So today, we're going to talk about things like what pollen actually is, how long pollen season lasts, what pollen looks like in a swimming pool, what it can do to your pool's look and chemistry, but most importantly, how to keep it under control because it is doable. First things first, what exactly is pollen? Pollen is basically plant reproductive dust. Trees, grasses, and flowers release these tiny microscopic particles into the air so plants can reproduce. In other words, pollen is basically plant romance floating through the air. And unfortunately for your pool becomes a third wheel in that relationship. During certain times of the year, especially spring, trees release massive amounts of pollen into the air, and it goes everywhere. Your car, your driveway, your outdoor furniture, and of course, your swimming pool, which apparently looks like it's the perfect place for pollen to hang out. Because pools are essentially large bodies of water sitting outside, they naturally become a collection point for airborne debris, and pollen is one of the most common seasonal contaminants out there. Pollen season varies depending on where you live, but generally it follows a pretty predictable pattern. In most places, tree pollen peaks in early spring. Grass pollen becomes more common in late spring and early summer, and weed pollen tends to show up later in the summer and into the fall. But the big pollen explosion most pool owners notice usually lasts about 4 to 8 weeks in the springtime. And during those weeks, it can feel like pollen is being dumped into your pool by the truckload. Believe me, we see it every week. Some mornings you walk outside and it looks like the trees had a meeting overnight and decided your pool was a perfect drop-off location. Now let's talk about what pollen actually looks like once it lands in your pool. Most of the time you'll see it as a yellow or yellow-greenish dust floating on the surface of the water. It often collects in areas where water circulation is weaker, like corners of the pool, along the tile line, on steps, near the skimmers. Sometimes it forms little patches or films that almost look like algae, and this is where a lot of pool owners get nervous. They see yellow dust and immediately think, oh, this has to be yellow algae. But there's an easy way to tell the difference. Algae usually sticks to surfaces, while pollen tends to float or settle lightly like pepper specks all over the floor, or in huge clumps of brownish yellowish debris. It doesn't look like sand like yellow algae does. If you put them side by side, there is a noticeable difference. If your pool has pollen, it's just hosting a very annoying plant party. Even though pollen isn't algae, it can still make your pool look pretty rough. You might notice things like cloudy water, yellow dust floating on the surface, debris collecting in skimmers, little pollen clumps drifting around or sitting on the floor and steps. And sometimes the pool can go from crystal clear to what the heck happened overnight, especially after windy days. Wind basically acts like nature's leaf blower, sending pollen straight into your pool. And if there's a lot of trees nearby, your pool can become what I like to call the neighborhood pollen magnet. Every neighborhood has one of those. Here's something a lot of pool owners don't realize. Pollen doesn't just affect how your pool looks, it can also affect your water chemistry. Pollen is an organic material, and when organic material enters your pool, it starts to break down. When that happens, it consumes more chlorine. It adds contaminants to the water. It increases chlorine demand, which means during heavy pollen season, your pool may burn through chlorine faster, require more chemical adjustments, become cloudy if sanitizer levels drop. Basically, your chlorine's working overtime like, hey, I signed up to sanitize this pool, not fight a forest. And if chlorine levels drop too low, pollen can create conditions where algae becomes more likely to grow. So pollen itself isn't algae, but it can definitely help algae move in if the pool isn't maintained properly. Now let's talk about the most important part, how to keep pollen under control. Because the good news is pollen is annoying, but it is very manageable. You can skim the pool more frequently. During pollen season, surface skimming becomes extremely important. Pollen floats, so removing it before it sinks makes a big difference on how your pool behaves. Even a quick skim each day can remove a surprising amount of pollen. Clean your skimmer and pump baskets more frequently. Pollen can fill skimmer and pump baskets faster than you'd expect. When baskets get clogged, water flow decreases and the pool stops capturing debris effectively. So during pollen season, it's a great idea to check baskets more often, because a clogged skimmer or pump basket is basically like telling your pool, hey, good luck out there. Run your pump longer. Good circulation helps move pollen toward the skimmers and the filter, which ultimately removes the pollen out of the pool. During heavy pollen days, running the pump a little longer helps your filtration system capture more debris. Think of your pump as the pool's cleanup crew, and during pollen season, they're working overtime. Brush your pool more. Sometimes pollen settles on surfaces, like steps or the floor. Brushing moves that debris back into circulation so the filter can catch it and remove it. Plus, brushing is always a good practice anyway. And honestly, your pool deserves a little spa treatment after being covered in pollen all week. Keep your filter clean. Your filter does most of the heavy lifting during pollen season. Cartridge filters, sand filters, and DE filters all need to be cleaned regularly to handle the extra debris load. If the filter gets clogged, it can't keep up with pollen entering the pool. And at that point, the pollen basically wins, and we don't want pollen winning, ever. Maintain proper chlorine levels. Because pollen increases chlorine demand, it's important to keep your sanitizer levels up and consistent. Proper chlorine levels prevent cloudy water and algae growth. So during pollen season, testing and adjusting chemicals regularly becomes even more important. Think of chlorine as a bouncer for your pool, keeping unwanted guests out, pollen included. So if you walk outside this spring and your pool suddenly looks like someone sprinkled yellow dust all over it, don't panic. It's probably just pollen doing its thing. The good news is pollen is mostly a maintenance issue, not a serious water problem. With a little extra skimming, brushing, filtration, and proper chemistry, you can keep your pool looking great even during peak pollen season. And eventually, pollen season ends, the trees calm down, and your pool goes back to looking the way it should. Clear, clean, and not like a giant bowl of lemon powder. If you found this video helpful, make sure to like, subscribe, and follow along for more pool tips, repairs, and service insights. And as always, thanks for watching and have a great day.